They always called me the responsible one. Sounds like a compliment, right? A little badge of honor for the older sister. But in my family, responsible was just a nice word for servant. It meant I was the one cleaning up messes, both the literal and the emotional kind. It meant I sacrificed my time, my money, and my dreams. Also my sister, the golden child, could have everything she ever wanted. I was expected at every family event, not as a guest, but as unpaid help, a silent cog in the machine that made her life look perfect. But when it came to my own life, my achievements, my needs, I was completely invisible. So when my sister Olivia's wedding day finally came, a day my family had been planning like a royal coronation since she was born, I knew I had a choice. I could keep playing the part of the dutiful, quiet, responsible daughter, or I could give her a wedding gift she would never forget. My life can pretty much be summed up by a series of quiet, painful comparisons. My name's Clara, my sister is Olivia. To anyone looking in, we were just two sisters, 2 years apart. But inside our house, we might as well have been from different planets. Olivia was the sun. I was just a tiny, distant moon, only seen because of her glow, and only useful for controlling the tides of our parents' moods. It started so early, I don't even have memories from before this dynamic was set in stone. Our birthdays were the perfect yearly showcase of the difference. For Olivia's 10th birthday, our backyard was turned into a mini carnival. I'm talking a bouncy castle, a professional magician, and a pony giving rides around the block. She got a mountain of gifts, including a brand new bike she'd only mentioned wanting once. My parents just beamed, their cameras flashing, documenting every second of their perfect daughter's perfect day. 2 months later, for my 12th birthday, I was allowed to have 2 friends for a sleepover. My big gift was a set of practical notebooks for school and a subscription to an educational magazine. When I tried to hide my disappointment, my mother patted my head and said, "We know you love to learn, Clara. You're our smart one." The unspoken part was always, and smart ones don't need fun things. Get this, Olivia, who had complained for weeks that my boring birthday was taking up a weekend, got to go on a special shopping trip with my dad that same day. She came home with bags of new clothes to make up for the boredom. I just sat in my room, listening to her show off her new outfits to my mom, while my friends and I quietly played a board game. That was the first time I really understood that smart and responsible were just consolation prizes for being the less loved child. This pattern seeped into every part of our lives. In school, I was a straight A student. I loved books, I loved a challenge, and I worked my butt off for every single grade. When I brought home a perfect report card, my dad would glance at it and nod. "Good job, Clara. That's what we expect." No celebration, no reward. It was just my duty. Olivia, on the other hand, was coasting on C's and D's. But her report cards were treated like a crisis that required gentle, concerned meetings at the dining room table. "Oh honey, you're trying so hard," my mother would coo. "School is just so rigid. You're a creative spirit, you can't be defined by a grade." Her C in art was framed as proof of her genius, while my A+ in calculus was just a line on a piece of paper. When we got older, the stakes got higher. It wasn't about bikes and parties anymore, it was about our futures. I started working at the local library when I was 15, shelving books for minimum wage. Every single dollar went into a savings account for college. I knew, without anyone ever saying it, that there was no college fund with my name on it. I was the responsible one, so I was expected to figure it out on my own. Olivia never worked a day in her life. She decided she was going to be a painter, and my parents practically fell over themselves to support her passion. They paid for private lessons, crazy expensive supplies, and when the time came, they shelled out a ridiculous amount of money for her to go to a private, out-of-state art school. When I gently asked how they were affording it, my father sat me down for one of his serious talks. "Clara, your sister is different. She needs our support to flourish. You're strong and independent. You'll land on your feet, you always do." They weren't just complimenting me, they were letting themselves off the hook. My strength was their excuse for their neglect. So, I did what the responsible one does. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I worked 2 jobs all through my senior year of high school, often getting home after midnight just to start my homework. I missed football games, parties, all the simple, stupid fun of being a teenager. I remember one night with painful clarity, my senior prom. I had saved for months to buy a dress, a simple but beautiful navy blue gown. I even let myself get excited about having a date. An hour before he was supposed to pick me up, my phone rang. It was my mother, her voice tight with panic. "Clara, thank God. Your sister had a little fender bender. She's fine, totally fine, but she's hysterical, and the car needs to be towed. Your father and I are at a dinner for his boss. We can't possibly leave. You need to go handle it." I just stood there, my hair in curlers, my makeup half done, looking at that dress on my door. "Mom, it's my prom night," I whispered, my voice shaking. There was a cold silence. "Clara, don't be selfish. This is a real emergency. Your sister needs you. What's more important, a high school dance or your family?" That question just hung there, a perfect summary of my entire life. My wants were selfish. Olivia's were emergencies. I took a deep breath, the smell of hairspray and cheap perfume filling my lungs. "I'll go," I said, the words tasting like ash. I took out the curlers, wiped off my makeup, and spent my prom night in a greasy auto body shop, filling out insurance papers and calming down my sobbing sister, who was more upset about a scratch on her convertible than the fact that I was missing a once-in-a-lifetime night. She never even thanked me. The next day, seeing my friends' happy photos, I didn't feel sad. I felt a cold, hard knot of resentment solidifying in my chest. That feeling would become my constant companion for the next 10 years. I went to a state school, 2 hours away. I overloaded my schedule with classes and worked nearly full-time at the campus coffee shop to pay my rent and buy books. I took on student loans that felt like a mountain I'd never climb. Meanwhile, the money flowed to Olivia like a river. My parents paid her rent for a trendy loft, bought her a new car when she wrecked the first one, and sent her cash every month for art supplies. I called home once, desperate, after my laptop died right before finals. I asked if they could possibly lend me a few $100s. My mother's voice was full of this strained pity. "Oh, Clara, the timing is just awful. We just had to pay for a special workshop for Olivia in Italy. You know how it is. Can you maybe pick up a few extra shifts?" I hung up the phone, not with tears, but with this strange, chilling clarity. They didn't see it. They truly did not see the blatant, soul-crushing inequality. Or if they did, they justified it so completely that it felt normal to them. I was the rock. I was there to be stood on, not to be cared for. From that day on, I stopped asking. I stopped expecting. I built my own life, brick by painful brick, fueled by caffeine and a quiet, burning anger. I graduated with honors, got a decent job in accounting, a practical, responsible job of course, and started chipping away at my mountain of debt. By all accounts, I was a success. But in my family's eyes, I was just a footnote in the grand story of Olivia. Fast forward about 6 years. I was 28, had my own apartment, and I'd finally paid off the last of my student loans. It felt like I could actually breathe for the first time in my adult life. The knot of resentment in my chest had loosened into a sort of tired resignation. I kept my family at a distance, visiting for major holidays where I'd somehow always end up on dish duty while Olivia told a captive audience about her latest artistic struggles. Then came the announcement. It was Easter Sunday. Olivia arrived late, as usual, but this time, she had a guy with her. His name was David. He was handsome, dressed perfectly, and just radiated old money. An investment banker, and he was completely smitten with my sister. Before we even cut the ham, Olivia stood up, flashed a diamond ring the size of a small car, and announced they were engaged. The room just exploded. My mother burst into happy tears. My dad was beaming, clapping David on the back and calling him son. This was it. The moment everything had been building towards. Olivia, the creative spirit, had landed her prince. This wasn't just an engagement, it was the ultimate validation of my parents' entire life philosophy. Their investment had finally paid off. Within minutes, the focus shifted to me. But not how you'd think. No one asked if I was happy for my sister. Nope. My mother cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes gleaming with a manic energy. Clara, this is it. We have to make this the most perfect wedding ever. You'll help, of course. You're so good at organizing things. I wasn't being asked to be the maid of honor. That, of course, went to one of Olivia's bohemian chic art school friends. No, my role was much less glamorous. I was instantly appointed the unpaid wedding planner, project manager, and family therapist. Your sister is going to be under so much stress, my dad told me, pulling me aside. We're all counting on you to be the calm one, to handle the details. You know how to get things done. And just like that, my life for the next 6 months became a living nightmare. My full-time job as an accountant was now just a side hustle to my real, much more demanding job, Project Olivia's Perfect Day. My evenings and weekends were gone, swallowed by guest list spreadsheets, calls with caterers, and frantic emails about the exact shade of ivory for tablecloths. I refereed screaming matches between Olivia and my mom over flowers. I spent an entire Saturday driving to 3 different bakeries because Olivia couldn't decide on a cake flavor. Through it all, I was treated like an employee. An incompetent one at that. If a vendor was late to reply, it was my fault. If a quote came in over budget, it was my fault for not negotiating harder. Olivia would call me at all hours, crying because she couldn't find the right shoes, or screaming because a guest hadn't RSVP'd. And after every one of her tirades, my mom would call me. Just be patient with her, Clara. This is the most important day of her life. Just make it happen. But while I was drowning in wedding details, I started noticing things. Things that didn't add up. I'm an accountant. I look at numbers all day. I see patterns. And the financial pattern I was seeing with Olivia and David was off. They were planning a wedding that I figured would cost well over 6 figures. The venue alone was insane. Sure, David had money, but they were living a lifestyle that seemed wild even for him. I'd overhear whispered conversations, catch snippets about declined credit cards, and see Olivia take tense, hushed phone calls in another room. The moment of discovery wasn't some big cinematic scene. It was boring, which made it even more chilling. I was at my parents' house, using their computer to print the final seating chart. My mom had asked me to find an old email from an aunt, and her account was still logged in. As I typed in the search bar, a recent email thread with my father caught my eye. The subject, Olivia's accounts. My heart started hammering. I knew I shouldn't look. It was a total violation of privacy. But a decade of being the responsible one, of cleaning up messes I didn't make. It creates a morbid curiosity you just can't fight. I clicked. My blood ran cold. It was a chain of emails detailing huge cash transfers from my parents' retirement account to Olivia's bank account. There were frantic messages from my dad, begging her to stop spending. Olivia, the fund is almost empty, one read. We had to take out a second mortgage on the house. You promised this would be the last time. I kept digging. I went into the browser history. My dad had been looking up high-interest personal loans. He'd also been searching for the value of Olivia's art business. I found the business registration. It was real. Then I found the public credit reports. The business was drowning in over $50,000 of debt. She hadn't sold a painting in years. The whole thing, her entire identity as a successful artist, was a complete sham. It all clicked. The lavish lifestyle, the designer clothes, the fancy dinners on her Instagram. It was a fantasy, bankrolled by my parents' life savings. She had been lying to everyone, especially her wealthy fiancé, David. This wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was a hostile takeover. It was her last, desperate gamble to lock down a financial lifeline before her whole house of cards came tumbling down. And my parents, her faithful enablers, were letting her drain them dry to keep the illusion going. I just sat there, in my dad's old office chair, staring at the screen. The seating chart I was supposed to be printing felt like a sick joke. I was arranging deck chairs on the Titanic. And I, the ever-responsible Clara, had been tasked with making sure the collision with the iceberg was the most beautiful, well-organized event of the year. The knot of resentment in my chest, the one that had been quiet for years, tightened with a searing, white-hot fury. They hadn't just neglected me. They had actively torched their own future, and mine by extension, for a lie. And they had the nerve to ask me to help build it. The day of the wedding, the sky was a perfect, cloudless blue. The kind of offensively cheerful day that feels like a personal insult when your world is caving in. I stood at the back of the breathtakingly expensive garden venue, the one I knew was paid for with the last of my parents' security, and watched the guests arrive. Everything was perfect. The floral arrangements I'd spent 3 weeks fighting over were stunning. The string quartet I'd booked was playing softly. Every single detail that had stolen my sleep for 6 months had come together perfectly. And I felt absolutely nothing. My head was a raging storm. I had a manila folder in my handbag. Inside were printouts of everything. The bank transfers. The credit card statements showing thousands spent on designer bags and spa days. The desperate emails from my father. It was a perfectly organized portfolio of my sister's lies. My hand kept drifting to my bag, the paper inside feeling like a lead weight. Part of me was screaming to just get in my car and leave. Let the lie play out. Let them have their perfect day and deal with the fallout when the bills came due. But then, right before the ceremony, came the final straw. I was doing one last check of the reception hall when Olivia stormed in, her face a mask of thunder under her veil. She pointed a trembling finger at the head table. "What is that?" she hissed. I looked. "They're the napkins," I said, confused. "They're eggshell," she seethed, her voice dangerously low. "I asked for ecru. Eggshell. Do you have any idea how this clashes with the peonies? You had one job, Clara. One job. Handle the details. And you couldn't even get the napkins right. You're ruining my day." She didn't wait for me to answer. She just spun around and stormed out, leaving me there, shaking. Eggshell versus ecru. That was it. After 6 months of my life, my labor, my sanity. It all came down to a shade of white you could barely even see. And in that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it vaporized. The question of what I should do was gone. It was no longer a choice. It was a certainty. The ceremony was a blur. I watched my sister float down the aisle on my father's arm, a vision in a dress that cost more than my car. I watched David, the unsuspecting lamb, look at her with pure adoration. I watched my parents weeping in the front row, tears of pride and, I now knew, absolute financial terror. When the officiant said, "You may now kiss the bride," a wave of nausea hit me. The reception started. Speeches were made. The best man told some funny stories. Then, my father stood up, his voice thick with emotion. He talked about his little princess, his artistic, free-spirited Olivia, who had always shone so brightly. He said she had made their lives so rich. I had to grip the tablecloth to keep from laughing out loud. Rich? She had made them poor. Finally, the MC smiled and said, "And now, a toast from the bride's sister, Clara." Polite, lukewarm applause rippled through the room as I walked to the mic. I could feel every eye on me. They were expecting a sweet, awkward speech from the plain, responsible older sister. I gripped the microphone stand, my knuckles white. With my other hand, I reached into my bag, pulled out a small, elegantly wrapped gift box, and placed it on the podium. I cleared my throat. "Good evening, everyone." My voice was steadier than I thought it would be. For my whole life, I've looked up to my sister, Olivia. I paused, letting the lie hang there for a second. She has always been the star of our family. She has always gotten everything she wanted. It's a testament to her incredible ambition. I looked right at Olivia. Her smile was tight, impatient. She just wanted me to finish up and sit down. "They say a wedding is a day of truth and new beginnings," I continued, my voice getting stronger. "And I've always been told my role in this family is to be the responsible one. The one who cleans up the messes. So tonight, I feel it's my final responsibility to make sure that this new beginning, this marriage, is built on a foundation of solid, unshakable truth." A confused murmur went through the crowd. I saw my mother's smile start to fade. I turned my eyes to my parents. "Mom, Dad, You've done everything for Olivia. You've given her the world. Including this beautiful wedding. I did some accounting. You know, it's my job. I estimate this day cost about $120,000. A truly stunning gift. A gift, as I recently found out, that was paid for not with your savings, but by taking out a second mortgage and draining nearly every penny from your retirement fund. A collective gasp swept the room. My father turned sheet white. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Olivia's face went from annoyed to pure disbelief. But I wasn't done. I turned to David. His expression was frozen in polite confusion. David, I said, my voice softening just a little. I believe honesty and trust are the cornerstones of a marriage. You're a man who deals in investments, in risk and reward. So you, of all people, deserve to know the full terms of the investment you're making today. That successful art business Olivia told you about? It's currently over $50,000 in debt. The lavish lifestyle she's been living wasn't funded by her art. It's been funded by my parents, who are now on the edge of financial ruin because they could never tell her no. Dead. Silence. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. Olivia was on her feet now, her face a horrible mix of rage and panic. You're lying, she whispered. Am I? I said, my voice cold and clear. I picked up the small gift box. I opened it slowly. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was a USB drive. My wedding gift to you, Olivia, isn't a toaster. It's the truth. I then turned back to David, who was just staring at me, his eyes wide with dawning horror. I pulled the manila folder from my bag. And for you, David, it's the due diligence you forgot to do. A complete record. Bank statements, credit card bills, the loan applications my father filled out, the emails. I just felt the responsible thing to do was to make sure you were entering this marriage with all the facts. I walked over to the head table and placed the folder gently in front of David. His eyes flicked down to it, then up to Olivia's ashen face. He didn't need to open it. He knew. He knew I was telling the truth. I walked back to the mic for my final words. I looked at the sea of stunned faces, at my sister who was now openly sobbing, at my mother covering her face with her hands, and at my father, who just looked broken. I was always told my role was to support this family. Today, my support is to stop this lie from consuming what little is left. I wish you all the life you deserve. I paused. I'm just done being responsible for it. I placed the microphone back on the stand. The soft click echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. Then, I turned around and without looking back, I walked out of that reception hall, past the perfect flowers and the ecru napkins, and into the rest of my life. Walking out of that venue was the most terrifying and liberating moment of my entire life. The warm night air hit my face, and for the first time, it felt like it was my air to breathe. I got to my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. As I drove away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I pulled over a few blocks away, took out my phone, and without even looking, turned it off and threw it in the glove compartment. The silence was incredible. I didn't go home. I drove 2 hours to a cheap motel in a town where nobody knew me, and I slept for 14 hours straight. The aftermath, as I found out later, was as catastrophic as you'd imagine. The reception ended in chaos. David, a man whose world was built on calculated risk, did not appreciate finding out he was the subject of a fraudulent merger. Apparently, he didn't say a word. He just stood up, looked at Olivia, and walked out. The marriage was annulled before the ink was even dry. My family, as expected, disowned me. My phone, when I finally turned it on days later, was a toxic dump of voicemails and texts calling me a monster, a jealous, spiteful creature who ruined everything. I listened to the first 10 seconds of one from my mother, heard the word ungrateful, and calmly deleted them all. I blocked their numbers. I packed up my apartment, gave my notice at work, and within a month, I moved across the country. I cut every single tie. That was 5 years ago. The first year was tough. I was alone, and the guilt would try to creep in during the quiet moments. But then I'd remember the feeling of that auto body shop on prom night, or the pity in my mother's voice on the phone, and the guilt would just fade, replaced by a steely resolve. I built a new life, a life that is truly my own. I have a job I love at a firm that actually values me. I have friends who see me for who I am, not what I can do for them. I'm in a relationship with a kind man who celebrates my successes like they're his own. I am happy. I'm at peace. I'm free. I heard through a distant cousin a few years ago that Olivia had to declare bankruptcy. She moved back in with my parents, into my old room. The three of them are apparently miserable, all trapped in that house with the weight of their lies and financial ruin. The golden child's pedestal had crumbled, and without the responsible one there to hold everything up, the entire rotten structure had collapsed in on itself. I don't feel happy about their misery. Honestly, I don't feel anything at all. And that quiet, that apathy. It's the greatest gift I ever gave myself. I finally became responsible for the only person whose happiness was ever my job, me. If any part of my story resonates with you, if you've ever felt like the scapegoat, the fixer, or the invisible one in your family, please know you are not alone, and you do not have to carry that burden forever. Taking back your own life is the most responsible thing you can ever do. What would you have done in my shoes? Was there another way? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories matter. And if you'd like to hear more stories about finding your voice, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening.